It is cold. It's very cold today. It's one of the last days in October 2017. And we have our first snowfall right now happening. It really isn't sticking. It's been snowing on and off for the last 4 or 5 hours, but nothing's going to stick. But it's cold. It's in the 30s. I've been out splitting wood. I've been harvesting walnuts. But what I really want to talk to you today about is growing a food forest, or maybe you already have one and don't even know about it. So we are talking about food forests in this video. So what is a food forest? I'm going to tell you what a food forest is to me. It follows the principles of permaculture. So you are having a sustainable practice that you are able to harvest, your animals are able to use the food forest, wildlife is able to use the food forest as well. So the great thing about a food forest, there are two ways you can have a food forest. One is you make a food forest, and that's what most people do. They make their own food forest. By doing that, you are following and mimicking what's already happening in forests in your area. So sorry, the goats were hitting heads. So I was gonna check them out. But I guess we're not gonna do that right now. So if you live near a forest, you need to spend time in that forest to understand the dynamics of that forest, to figure out what you can grow in your area. You want to spend time in the woods. So if you've ever been to the woods and are hanging out, you may have noticed that there's no weeds really. Of course, we have invasive species, but there's no weeds. Everything's working together. Everything has evolved together for millions of years, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They've developed symbiotic relationships. So forests have layers. They have the ground layer, they have the annual layer, the perennial layer, shrubs, smaller trees, bigger trees, vines growing on those trees. Most food forests have about 7 layers of a different type of plant life. So you want to try to mimic a forest if you grow your own food forest. The nice thing about a food forest, you don't really have to do any weeding. That's nice. I don't like to do weeding. Now, I'm not going to kid you. You still got to do some work, especially if you're planting fruit trees. You got to prune your fruit trees. That's just how it is. But a food forest is great because it allows you to plant more than in a typical garden, because you are finding species that work together, that have slightly different requirements, slightly different habitats, slightly different niches. And that's the great thing about a food forest. You only have to plant it once, and you never have to plant anything ever again. Now, I like that, not having to plant year after year. So I am working on a food forest on my property that I've planted, and also I am going to talk about the food forest I already have. So first I'm going to kind of walk around the property. I'm going to talk about the food forest I'm working on. So right behind me is a fig tree that I planted several months ago. This is its first year of growth. If I'm lucky, maybe I'll get some figs next year. I also planted, you can't really see it, but there is a pomegranate tree back here. That's right, a pomegranate tree. So this is the start of my food forest. And then even back here behind me, we have lots and lots of wild raspberries. I will never buy raspberries to plant because we have them growing naturally. We also have a gigantic patch of blackberries, so we will never ever plant blackberries on our farm for our own personal use unless we turn into a blackberry farm, because we have tons of blackberries that nature has provided us. Another important part of my food forest is I am harvesting firewood to keep my family warm. So this pasture here is not great for horses, but it is great for goats. So this was woods when we moved in here about 3 years ago. I've harvested a lot of the trees for firewood, for fencing, for other projects. And now we have a goat pasture from our food forest. That's something else with a food forest. You want to really survey your land, figure out what you already have, and then go from there. So I am going to be using fence posts out of my trees from my food forest. I also have a plan to build a cordwood goat shelter. If I can, I might do it this winter. I have a lot of projects. But that cordwood goat shelter, the wood, most of the wood is going to be provided by my food forest that I have been managing and I have been growing. Got to get under this fence here. So, like I said, you can plant a food forest, which I am in the process of doing that. I'm going to show you some of the things we've planted and some of the crops that people before us have planted. So this is our garden. I love the garden. I'm never going to give up normal gardening, but food forests are just such a cool concept. I just really love them. So I'm going to show you some more of our food forest here. This here is one of our apple trees. We have another apple tree here. We did not get a lot of apples this year. We had a really late snow. It snowed, I think, early May last year, when the flowers were blooming already. We have 2 peach trees, and we have had tons and tons of peaches, so that has been awesome. I gotta pick up my glove here as we walk. So what else do we have for our food forest? We have a cherry tree. So here is our cherry tree. We also have a wild plum tree that mainly the birds eat. So here is our wild plum tree that the birds love. So that's something else about a food forest. A food forest does not have to be just for you. It might be for your animals. It might be for wildlife. So if you've been watching any of our videos, you know that wildlife is important to me. I enjoy wildlife. I enjoy trying to expand their habitat, to welcome them onto our farm. One of the ways we do that is through a food forest. Here's another tree, a crabapple tree. That's great for our animals, our goats and pig and horses. Love, love, love that crabapple tree. Now I'm going to show you 2 more trees that are part of our food forest that I have not had a chance to harvest since we've lived here in about 3 years. This here is a really cool tree. It's a mulberry tree. Right behind the barn, and there's another tree that's also a mulberry tree. So our farm was a tobacco farm, and there were cows on our property at some point, maybe 30, 40 years ago. So the previous owners were homesteaders that had a homestead, probably. We have found some cool treasures from past homesteaders. We've found really cool bottles that I need to share with people. So I think what started me on the food forest is one tree, and one tree in particular, and that is the walnut tree. We have so many walnuts. It is just crazy. I could be a walnut farmer by accident, because I'm saying we probably have 30 walnut trees just that are in easy access. But this behind me is a queen bee of the walnuts here. This is where we have our tree house on this awesome walnut tree that probably was planted by owners, I think, at least 150 years ago. This is a big old tree here, but I just love it. So this walnut tree, and again we have our tree house now, but this walnut tree is what really got me going on having a food forest. So that is just the start of our food forest that people, that either I have planted or the people before us have planted, and we're just taking care of their forward thinking, long-term thinking. So I am going to talk about a different type of food forest. Way back there is the woods of our property. We have about 13 acres of forest. Some of it's been logged, but we actually have some big old trees back there that one day I'm going to show you. But the great thing about that forest, I know it is a food forest just waiting for me to figure it out and to discover it. I've already surveyed some of the lower property. We have these amazing oak trees up there that next year I'm going to harvest and make flour out of the acorns. We also have hickories that are wild hickories. They weren't planted by someone. I have found maybe 4 or 5 of those, and the red oaks, there's like 16 of them. And I know there's just a plethora of food. There's mullein right over there. There's lots of great uses for mullein, lamb's ear. We have sassafras trees, which you can make tea from. We have mint everywhere, which I hate mint, but it is here. So my point is, you can grow a food forest, or you may have a food forest on your property that you don't even know about. I am really excited to learn more about foraging, about food forest management. We have ramps on our property. If you've never had a ramp, ramps are so good. I know there's wild mushrooms to be found. I know a little bit about mushrooms. I am going to be making my own mushroom logs in the next month as soon as the leaves fall from all of the trees. So I am building my food forest for my family, for our animals, for the wildlife. And the great thing is, some of this stuff is already here. I don't have to do anything but go and pick it up. We have tons and tons of walnuts. I just can't even explain the amount of walnuts we have. It is redonkulous. I mean, they are everywhere. Like, if you look behind me, you can see tons and tons and tons of walnuts. So if you want to grow a food forest, spend time in your local woods. People have been using the food forest concept for thousands and thousands of years, especially in the tropics. If you've ever been to a farm in the tropics, or just a friend's backyard or a local person's backyard, then you know what I'm talking about. There's just stuff growing everywhere. Everything has a purpose. There's food right in front of you anywhere you reach. So some more history on our property. Before it was a tobacco farm, there were native people living in this area, Cherokee people, very close to us. Less than 3 miles away is a Cherokee village site, an archaeological dig site. So we are in an area where lots of native people lived, and I'm sure they were in the same forest as I am right now, and they knew what to harvest and how to live, and I'm just trying to learn just a little bit about that. So I am really hoping to grow my food forest and to find my food forest. I know up in those hills is a plethora of undiscovered, to me, at least undiscovered to me, food and medicine. So just get out there, learn about food forests. I'm just now learning about it. I wish I had learned about it in the spring so I would know so much already. But that's a great thing about homesteading. You can't learn it overnight. No one can learn it overnight. And there's so much to learn that if one person says they're a homesteader and they're talking to another homesteader, they may have an entirely different knowledge set, which is awesome. For example, I want to get into bees. I know nothing about bees. But I know there are homesteaders out there that their whole life is bees. So that is a great thing, again, about homesteading, is that there's so much to learn. And you know what? I'm a lifelong learner. I try to learn something new every day. That's just how I am. If I don't, I get kind of bored. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. I know it's a long one, but I wanted to talk about food forests. It's just such a cool, amazing concept. I am going to be learning a lot more this winter, so when spring comes, I will know what to forage, when to forage. I am going to be ordering more fruit trees for my own homemade food forest, with a combo of nature's food forest up in the hills and my own food forest that I am actively learning about growing. I cannot wait until next season, and I am going to just come back with a passion. I mean, that passion's not going to leave, I guess. It's going to be here. So the fall garden's going great. Animals are doing great. Life is doing good. So I guess I don't got much more to say in this video, but be good and do good, and we will see everybody in the future.